Rise and shine, Mr. Freeman. That doesn't seem right at all. I thought there was something about a blue pill. Let's try something else. So I've covered the movie adaptation of Atlas Shrugged and compared it to how it plays out compared to the actual book. I figured I would do the same thing again. This time, though, with Various Jules Verne's works. So the movies that I know of, you got 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Journey to the Center of the Earth, and the epic of Around the World in 80 Days. In terms of actually reading these books, I first read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, I want to say in 8th or 9th grade offhand, which was followed by Around the World in 80 Days, which I think I read sometime in high school. Then A Journey to the Center of the Earth. I'm pretty sure I read that in the BC before COVID time, so I'd say 4 or 5 years ago. But for now, I want to go in the order that I watched the movies in. So we start with Disney's adaptation of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Now because it's Disney, I'm not even going to attempt to show footage, so I'm just going to talk about it instead. I think the best way to describe the movie and the book, for the most part, this is really more in name and just a few events, but these are pretty much two different adaptations. So to start, to give a synopsis of the story itself. So, the seas are being plagued by some sort of mysterious sea monster that just see attacking all forms of cargo and just destroying the economy in the same way. Now there is this professor. Unfortunately, I can't remember his name either in the movie or the book, but they're both the same character, who is giving logic to the idea that a sea monster is probably just like a giant squid or there's some sort of ship malfunctions. So he, as well as his manservant, a little French guy, played by Peter Lorre in the movie, and once again I just can't remember his name, they go on board a shipping vessel and see what they can find along the way. That's how it happens in the book. It's pretty similar here, but they really focus in on this character of Ned Land. He is a harpooner that basically wants the glory of killing this mysterious sea monster with his giant harpoon. Very similar character in the book, but they never really meet up with him until later. Now the way it plays out in the book, they're on their journey for a few months when all of a sudden a sea monster comes by and attacks. During the scuffle, the ship is still pretty stable, but unfortunately the professor and his assistant are thrown overboard and are just kind of straddling the Atlantic waiting for somebody to pick them up. And there they come on a very mysterious looking island. It looks like it's made out of solid steel almost. And there they bump into land. Once again, pretty similar to how it plays out in the movie. But here's really the big difference. In the book, the group all go down into the vessel, and it's just silent except for a few lights for a few hours when Captain Nemo comes forward, and each of them try to explain their story. First in English, then in French, and then various other languages. But Captain Nemo just doesn't seem to understand anything of what's going on. How it happens in the movie is that they explore the vessel around a little bit and find it abandoned. That is until they find that there's some sort of funeral service going on. During it, one of the divers on the outside spots somebody on the inside of the vessel and then goes to bring them captive. Then from there, they basically have to promise that they'll never tell anybody that they ever found this and that they can never leave. It wasn't so dark like that in the book. After that dark room scene, Captain Nemo does come forward and explains he just wanted to test them. Wanted to see how knowledgeable they were in all these languages and everything. Now, since the original novel is in French, I'm going to assume he's speaking French the whole time, as well as most of the characters, but I've obviously read an English translation. I don't know a lot of French. In the book, Captain Nemo just kind of goes over what he's doing. Basically, he invented the submarine, It's a combination of various parts came in from various countries and then welded together off the coast of a secret island. That way nobody could really spy on him. He is obsessed with the ocean, but whenever he tries to tell people his findings, everybody just kind of laughs him away as some sort of crazed loon. So the Nautilus, the submarine mentioned, was made as a way to just kind of prove them wrong, or if nothing else, just to find solitude in the deep blue sea. Now, it's kind of similar in the movie, but they actually make it darker. So, in the movie, the main reason that the submarine was made is that Captain Nemo, as well as all the crew on board the Nautilus, were once slaves. And that was how they escaped. And after they escaped, it was always their mission that they would just destroy anything that would be involved in that slave trade whatsoever. While in the book, Captain Nemo sinking a few ships was really just by accident. He kind of surfaced at the wrong area, wondered why there was resistance, and then, oh dear, I didn't mean to do that. Well, Captain Nemo in the movie is basically a psychotic killer. He doesn't really care who he hurts, just as long as he gets revenge on all those people that held him slaves for so many years. After that, there is actually another scene that plays out pretty similar in both the movie and the book. Now, Ned Land is getting a little stir-crazy and wants to be able to see what it's like to be able to walk on land again, as opposed to just seeing ocean everywhere. So he convinces Captain Nemo to just kind of drop him off at a little island in the Pacific and just do a fair bit of hunting. The assistant to the professor feels very much the same way, just wants to get out and walk around for a little bit. So they do. But unfortunately, they find that the island is inhabited by cannibals. They have to go back onto the ship. Now, in both versions, Captain Nemo is very annoyed by this, but takes him in anyway. How it works is exactly how it plays out in the movie. They all go to attack the submarine, when all of a sudden the whole thing just becomes electrified and all of them just start running away from all the pain. Obviously, it's a bit more cartoonish in the movie, how it's described in the book, but it's kind of hard to show people being electrocuted without maybe showing a few bolts here and there. From here is where the biggest deviation is from the book. After that, the Nautilus is just going around the world trying to see what it can find in all its marine research. There is one point in the book that they even go to the North Pole, and they run into a fair bit of trouble there. They need to refuel on oxygen, but unfortunately they're stuck between about 10 feet of ice. Now, the way the Nautilus is described in the book is kind of similar to how it is on screen, in the idea that there's a point at the end of it, so that way it can actually break through the ice. However, until that point, oxygen deprivation is just kind of happening, and the assistant to the professor refuses to take oxygen until the professor does, so he's just kind of holding him down with a respirator until they can get back onto the surface. They just barely make it up there when they can start breathing again normally. This scene sort of happens in the movie. Basically, they go way too deep to the point where the pressure starts to break some of the machinery, and there they lose oxygen for a fair bit. But I was really disappointed by this. I wanted to see them attempt to recreate this North Pole scene, which I really loved in the book. Now, in the book, how it ends is that they're caught in the middle of a hurricane known as the Maelstrom. The professor, Ned Land, as well as the assistant, all try to escape through a lifeboat that's attached to the submarine, while also trying to get some of the invaluable research along the way. However, they don't really have a lot of time, though, before the boat flies the other way, and the Nautilus is slowly kind of disappearing back into the ocean, never to be seen again. They are picked up, and nobody ever believes this fantastic adventure they're on. It plays out very differently in the movie. Now, like I said, Captain Nemo is a slave, and is basically driven by bloodlust to destroy any commerce whatsoever. Now, Ned Land is trying to form a plans of escape. So he sends out a whole bunch of messages in bottles wherever he can, basically telling them where the main control center is for this submarine, so that way they can get picked up. Either way, they had to go back to this main control center to get, like, a recharging battery. I'm not entirely sure what, but they had to go back there. Anyway, they go back, and instead of the warm reception that Ned Land was hoping for, it's an invasion, and they basically want everybody dead. So Captain Nemo can't stand this, so he rigs the entire island to blow in hopes that they won't be able to discover the Nautilus. And he basically says, oh yeah, the Nautilus is going with me. Everybody else in it must die. Obviously, Ned Land, the professor, and the assistant do not want to go for this. So the base blows up, and the controls are slowly being eaten away. However, Ned Land is able to break from his cell, release the professor and the assistant, and then they are able to escape that way, before seeing the Nautilus slowly sink into the distance. When I first saw this, I was just absolutely confused because this was not anywhere in the book. At least when it came to the whole famous giant squid scene. There is actually a part in the book where they fend off a giant squid, but they were able to drive it away with the electricity, the same as the cannibals, so it didn't really last very long. That makes a little more sense. The idea that trying to make something that was kind of a miniature thing into a big thing. But I just don't understand why in the world they needed a command center and why this command center was the only thing keeping this Nautilus afloat. It's kind of confusing. It's a good movie, but as for a faithful book adaptation, I'd give it maybe like a 65%. I hate to condemn it because there actually are a few scenes that play out exactly in the movie as they do in the book. But the things that are changed just seem a little unnecessary. And dare I say, even downright stupid at times. But all the same, if you haven't watched the movie or read the book, in a strange way, I recommend both. But I'd say watch the movie first and then read the book, knowing that both are very different stories being told. So that's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I hope you'll join me next time for Journey to the Center of the Earth.